753,667.
Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock and we are very excited today to be welcoming Professor Jean Greyling to our Science Engagement and Development Seminar Series, SEADS. Just a couple of housekeeping rules before we start. Firstly, can everyone please mute themselves every so often?
Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock and we are very excited.
There we go. That was the YouTube going live. So now we're also live on YouTube. So every so often I'm going to mute everyone. In terms of questions, we prefer questions in the chat. I have a colleague who's also watching the YouTube stream for questions. So if you're following this on YouTube, you can also ask your questions and we will answer them in the seminar in live. So now it's my great pleasure to welcome Prof. Greyling. So Professor Greyling has been at Nelson Mandela University since 1984, first as a student, then as a researcher, writing a PhD on the selection of first-year computer science students, and now as an associate professor, teaching mainly programming languages. But he will be telling us about this excellent project that he's been involved with, or has been leading rather, for the last 3 years. So Professor Greyling, the floor is yours, and I will now mute myself.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I must thank Ian Schroeder, who's been a big fan of the project, for linking us up. And I'm really looking forward to sharing what we've been doing in the past 3 years. I'm going to try my best to stick within 30 minutes, but let's see how it goes. I need to acknowledge the YES project, which is a collaboration between us, Germany, Namibia and Mozambique, and they've been partly sponsoring the project as a collaborative research project here in the Eastern Cape. I think we all are aware, if we're not, it's very real, that software development is one of the scarcest skills in South Africa at this stage. Being a professor in computer science, I know that industry is desperately needing software developers, and we are simply not producing enough for the country and most of the world. And our government is very aware of that. I don't need to remind you about that. All the talk about the fourth industrial revolution, President Ramaphosa often talks about it. He's mentioned it in his SONA addresses. So the government is very aware, and President Ramaphosa is known globally for one of the leaders when it gets to the fourth industrial revolution from a political side. We all know about coding and robotics, which the government wants to introduce in schools from grade R upwards. And there's a curriculum developed that we're going to roll it out to testing schools this year. I'm sure not much happened, unfortunately, but the plans are there. But there are realities which government needs to deal with. Of the 26,000 schools in our country, 15,000 don't have computer laboratories. I think it is generally known that most teachers are not trained to offer coding and robotics. And even if the teachers can train, many schools, the vast majority, will not have technical staff to maintain laboratories. Just for interest, they estimate that to replace those, to install 15,000 laboratories will cost on average R1 million per school. So I think we can agree that that's not going to happen very soon. So what I've picked up in the past 3 years, and we know the fear of missing out, we use that in the tongue-in-cheek when we talk social media, but for learners and parents and teachers and headmasters from your disadvantaged communities, this is something that causes anxiety. They hear about the fourth industrial revolution and all the plans government has regarding coding and robotics, and they just realize, but their schools are very far from implementing this. I've had a headmaster in tears when we volunteered to come to his school. Kids coding is nothing new. Seymour Papert started that in 1967. He was a South African-born scientist. He started with Lego Mindstorms. We know about Scratch, and there's many others. But the main problem with most of these packages is that they first of all need computers. These days, many of them also need connected labs, or they need very expensive robots. So the Tanks project was initiated in 2017. My honors student, Byron Vatterson, it was his honors project. And when we set up with the project, these were our main objectives. We wanted to exclude computers and expensive equipment. We want to introduce complex introductory coding concepts, and with that, computational logic. We wanted to promote programming, obviously, as a career, have sound principles when it came to the actual app itself, and then we wanted to have kids have fun while playing. So these are some of the principles that Byron tried to build in, and he did some theoretical research before he started building the app. Concrete activities, scaffolding, play and learn, problem solving. But there are many others that I don't really have time to mention in today's talk. So the mechanism of the app is that you get a challenge on your screen of your mobile phone. You have tangible puzzles or tokens that you build your command with, and then it executes on the screen. I think this short video might explain it best. So in this scenario, the tank needs to move backwards, turn left, and then move forward twice. So the learner packs out the code using the puzzle pieces, takes a photo of the code. When happy that it's the correct puzzle pieces that were recognized, you press yes and your tank moves. So for those of you that know programming, we have the basic turtle graphics commands: move forward, move backwards, turn left, turn right. The shoot is just a customized action in the program. We have the if statement, the for loop, while loops, and then nested loops or nested structures, as we often refer to them. So basically the coding construct that I would teach my first years in the first semester of an introductory programming module. I also enjoy the fact that we can teach optimization. If you look at this challenge to get the tank to the destination, it's a bunch of move forwards and turn lefts and turn rights, but the solution becomes very long and sloppy. And then you can teach the learners that by noticing that the tank keeps on just turning right when it hits a blockage, it's a very basic if statement within an infinite loop. So we can teach optimization and improving your code. Because there's 35 levels, the concept of gamification kicks in once groups starts playing, and it's really good to see how they start competing. We've developed school kits. The main part of these school kits is 7 lesson plans developed by a primary school teacher from Hudson Park in East London, and she's actually implemented them in her technology classes for primary school. And then there's 11 instructional videos, which guides the learners and the teachers from level 1 through to level 35 and tries to address all the other issues they might experience. We've also have 2 spin-off apps. I'm not going to say too much about them, Rangers and Boats. Just interesting, tanks was not very popular when I went into Europe. And once I go across the borders into Africa, people also frown on the theme. So we decided to make Rangers, which focuses on game poaching in Africa. And then Boats is mainly focusing on marine pollution. I want to spend most of the time today on just sharing some case studies on what worked. Because clearly when you're busy for 3 years, you start seeing the trends of what works and what doesn't work. So these are just going to be a bunch of case studies, no deep brain surgery. I'm just reporting on what I saw happening since we started more or less September 2017. The most successful business model has been making use of corporate sponsors, which allowed me to distribute the games to disadvantaged schools and communities, which initially was, and it's probably still is, our main target audience. So the companies you see here are some of our main sponsors, but we've had more throughout the past 3 years. Then we're also very dependent on what we call implementation partners. These are people that don't sponsor financially towards the project, but they help us roll it out in certain areas in the country, because obviously I cannot be everywhere in South Africa. I need to mention Joburg Libraries, who's probably been our biggest partner, especially up till before COVID. What definitely works is Tank's workshops. I've personally presented workshops probably to around 2,000 to 3,000 kids, literally across the country, and they always work. Whether it's grade 4s or matriculants, there's always a vibe that picks up after the first 5 minutes. And after about 45 minutes, you struggle to get the kids to stop. Tournaments have been great. Because it's physical, it gets quite expensive to have tournaments outside a city or outside a region. This was one we had in Port Elizabeth beginning of last year with 16 schools participating. But we've had a national tournament, but for that you need big sponsors because you need to take your teams to a central point in the end. We ended up at Sandton Convention Center with 100 kids from 5 provinces. But it's great fun and it's unbelievable how the kids prepare for these tournaments. Train the Trainer works very well. I specifically chose these 2 photos. On the left-hand side is Good Work Foundation in Hazyview. I've never been there. They've just watched my videos. On the top, you'll see they're training their facilitators on their 5 campuses. And that same afternoon, the facilitators were presenting workshops to learners. The top right is an educational specialist from Kroonstad in the Free State who got teachers from their farm schools in one day and to teach them tanks. He was very impressed. He said he had this feeling that when they left that afternoon, they actually felt equipped. He mentioned that often he presented stuff like web development, etc., to teachers, and that he really sensed that once they left, they were actually too scared to start. So the Train the Trainer model has been very effective. Big events, we've had huge events. The left-hand side is in Limpopo province last year. The mole down the right-hand side, we'll see a video on that later on. We've had the national championship in Convention Sandton with 100 kids. We've had 250 kids play here in Port Elizabeth on Mandela Day last year. So big events are doable. As I said, libraries, especially in Joburg, has been one of our most efficient partners. On the right-hand side, you see a library in Elsie's River in Cape Town, where the kids were playing tanks. These 4 boys, it's one of the heartwarming stories that I got from Joburg libraries. They kept on coming into the library in Lenasia every afternoon playing tanks until they reached all 35 levels. And then the librarian took them further and started teaching them Python on the laptops. So that's the kind of stories that I like hearing. Joburg Libraries also had a tournament throughout all the regions last year, which culminated in 9 teams coming together in the heart of Joburg. This team that won were unbelievable. They finished all 35 levels, I think, in 16 minutes. A lot of processing happened and practice happened beforehand. Learners Drive. This is another heartwarming story. Last year, July, we went into Kala, for those who don't know, the Eastern Cape, northeast of Queenstown, north of East London. I visited 6 schools where we gave them each a school kit, and we had a laptop, a cell phone sponsored per school. And then on the right-hand side is a photo we got about a month later where the learners were getting together over break time, watching the videos and training themselves through the levels. These were grade 10 learners who ended up teaching grade 8s the next month on how to play tanks. Coding clubs. These are extracurricular. At this stage, I'm aware of the coding clubs running in Tsomo, in the rural Eastern Cape, in Nelson Mandela Township in Port Alfred, in Hazyview with Good Work Foundation, and up to COVID, we had quite a strong coding club here in Wilmer Township. Selby Makuna from Good Work Foundation sent me this quote this morning on why they actually bought 4 school kits after they were donated 1 for their 5 campuses. And the things that he highlights is you don't need computers. It's practical and exciting. It's creative. And the collaboration. We're very serious that it has to happen in groups. So the kids play in groups, very seldom on their own. So those words are the words that we like to hear from facilitators. Technology lessons. I want to show you. No, this is sorry, I'm going to skip this one. Let's get to the next slide. Leanda Oosthuizen is an IT teacher at Alexander Road, which I could probably say is one of the top IT schools in our province. And if it wasn't for COVID, they would have introduced tanks into their grade 8 and 9 technology lessons this year. Many schools bought the school kits at the beginning of the year for this purpose. And unfortunately, everything it became shelfware, and hopefully it will be relevant again next year if COVID leaves us. The things that Leanda focuses on and emphasizes is the problem solving and the computational thinking, which is an integral part of the grade 8 and 9 technology lessons. And then again, the fact that she says at grade 8 and 9, you want kids to have fun, to play while they learn. And she's very positive about using tanks in this way. Because of COVID this year, I'm not going to say too much. We had to go virtual, so we ended up with both virtual tournaments where kids were playing from home, which was a huge success. Over 3 tournaments, we had over 1,000 learners playing with very little effort from teachers' sides. We reached about 400 schools, and the learners submitted probably around 30,000 scores in these 3 tournaments. Teachers were very excited. They said that this was a year in which kids really needed some extracurricular activity, and the fact that they could do it from home was a huge plus point for most schools. We also included some social beneficiaries as part of this tournament. The guy on the left did some 38-kilometer run to raise shoes for COVID orphans. We helped with distributing coffee in hospitals during COVID, and we also helped the Seabird organization, SANCOP, with a donation. A spin-off of the virtual concept is the concept of an online C# coding club. We're starting our second one on Monday, where the learners were taught via WhatsApp videos, and they could program on their cell phones. So once again, they didn't need computers, and they were actually doing actual C# coding.
I was introduced to coding at the Mold Day 2020 at Alexander Road High School, where I competed with my group for the tanks competition. I really enjoyed solving problems and riddles and everything of that sort, and I also enjoy doing maths. The coding club was a great experience. It just forced me to think and helped me to understand the C# programming language better.
Apologies for the sound, but that was videos that the kids sent in themselves over WhatsApp. This is just a spin-off thing that I haven't utilized, but what you're seeing here is a corporate team building event for all our deans and deputy vice chancellors. So the people on this photo you're seeing here are either deputy vice chancellors or deans. And we kept them busy for an hour. And a lot of people have told me that tanks has huge potential for corporate team building. And those are some of the aspects that become relevant when you think corporate team building: group work, leadership, conflict resolution, interaction, problem solving, strategizing, and obviously fun. I wish you could see very senior deans walking around in the room trying to get their spatial orientation in place. But I believe this kind of thing has huge potential, which I have not tapped yet. Then I want to focus just on a few, I call them individual stars, people that make it worth our while to do this. This young guy is from a township, Bochabello, outside Bloemfontein. Unfortunately, he's not studying computer science. I'm saying tongue in the cheek. He's going to be doing engineering at UCT the next year. These are just some of our stars. I want to mention the guy on the left, Zukanye Swartboy from Tanzania, who became one of our boats tournament stars, and he's now enthused his teacher. And she phoned me a week ago, and we will be taking tanks into their school in Tanzania next year. And we need someone like this that's an ambassador of a school. The 2 girls are sisters from Korea who won our latest boats tournament with excellent participation. And the young guy on the right is a very active tanks and boats player here from Lohiso High School in Zwede. Zimkita is a lady that got involved with tanks last year with a different angle. We wanted to experiment with the concept of coding clubs that sustain themselves as an income. When we got to know her, she was unemployed with no income. And up to COVID, she was running coding clubs in Walmer Township, in New Brighton, and in 3 schools in the townships, with a regular income for herself. I believe there's huge potential for this across the country, where it can be a startup income for unemployed young people. All she needed was a few tanks games, and we got a corporate to sponsor her 2 or 3 cell phones. Kulumanku on the right hand side, he was at our national champs in Sandton. He came 7th nationally when he was in grade 7. In grade 8, we found out that he was at a school that wasn't really functional, and we got a sponsor from Dimension Data, and he's now at Alexander Road doing brilliantly in grade 9, and he will be doing IT next year and is well away to be a BSc computer science student with us in 3 years' time. Bushle, on the left-hand side, is him on Mandela Bay 2018, playing tanks in his high school in New Brighton. Within a week, he completed all 35 levels, sent me the video of his last level, immediately said that he's going to be doing computer science or programming. He's now a first-year software development student at Nelson Mandela University. I saw his first semester marks. Most of them are in the 80s. So this is my first hands-on person that I could say that because of tanks, he is now studying software development. We've reached over 20,000 learners, so it's impossible for me to know what's happening across the country. It's a bread on the water kind of thing, but it's good to know some of these individuals. Just a quick request. I'm always open for possible research collaboration. I always say I'm more of an engager than a researcher, but I think there's quite a lot of research that can be done around this program, which I'm not getting to. The title said expanding career horizons, and when I get to this slide, I'm trying to say what the main aim of the tanks program is, because we're going into schools where the kids will not be working on computers when we finish. So that's reality. This lady here is Yolanda Jordan, who ended up studying BCom computer science in our department many years ago. Last year, I asked her what made her decide to study computers. She comes from a small town, Mount Frere, in the rural Eastern Cape, the old Transkei. And she told me that when she was in grade 9, she read the Da Vinci Code, in which they talked about cloud computing and algorithms. And just reading about programming made her to start DREAM. And that was grade 9. She wasn't at a school where she was taught IT. The dream just stayed alive. And after matric, she came to us and started studying computers. And that's my main aim with the tanks and the Rangers programming drive. I'm not teaching kids to code. I'll be naive if I say that. All I want to do, and the main thing I want to do, and when I say expand their career horizons, I want to add another dream to their lives so that they can dream after matric about another possible career that they can consider. Whether they're going to study computers or not is not in my hands, but at least I've given them an additional dream. Okay, we can start asking questions now. I'm just going to let this video play in the background. That was at Mole Day at Alexander Road, where we had about 15 schools participating early morning, 6 o'clock, and playing tanks. Over to you, the host, to give through questions. This video will stop soon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think everyone is clearly very inspired. So there are some questions straight coming from the chat here. So Ian is asking, who trains the teachers?
Okay, so in an ideal situation, I would go into a school and present a workshop where the teachers would be present, so they could see an actual workshop working, and then they could go on their own. But I've had many teachers who bought the kit or was denoted it, they watched the videos and they just started playing. So actually teachers don't need to be trained. they just need to facilitate a workshop and the clubs, and the kids kind of take over. But teachers that take it seriously can follow the lesson plans. They're very clear to follow. But yeah, so who trains the teachers? They can train themselves, or in some cases, if we have the luxury, I'm there to run one workshop. They don't need much more than that. The school kit contains all the solutions for the 35 levels. So they really get complex. So if teachers really get worried, they can look at the solutions.
Okay, this is excellent. So there's a suggestion that we should do a space version with South Africa's investment in astronomy, and I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for that. So maybe this is something that we can take further after this. Another question is there a connection with Africa Code Week and other coding training initiatives?
Yeah, that's a sensitive question. We did do an Africa Code Week event last year here in Port Elizabeth during October, where we partnered it with the Mandela Bay Science Centre in Uitenhage, and we reached 11,000 kids in 4 weeks' time with about 60 facilitators. And we mainly went to schools that do not have computer labs. But I've spoken to the founder of African Code Week from Ireland, but I'm not really finding much enthusiasm from their side globally or on the continent to participate. Not sure whether I'm not selling myself well enough or whether they want to rather invest in Scratch. The reality for me, if I'm kind of upfront, is that Scratch needs a lab. If you really want to reach millions of kids in Africa, you need something where you don't need a computer lab. So if anyone can convince Africa Code Week to consider us, that would be great. But we've had our own local event which we linked to Africa Code Week last year, but nothing more at this stage.
Okay. Now that's, I mean, the more initiatives, the better, right? Another question from Ian: how can we move this beyond the IT subject in schools and the co-curricula in the main curriculum into the main curriculum? Sorry.
Yeah, I always get these questions. We're busy now. My teacher at my collaborator at Hudson Park, we're going to be trying to at least link this to the CAPS curriculum for coding and robotic and give teachers some idea of where it links. To take it further implies developing new apps, which is a very expensive exercise. I was fortunate to have my honor student now as partner in this business. And if we had to pay someone to develop tanks, it would have been just under 400,000 Rand. Boats, which I've had to pay people to do, has cost me probably about 150,000 by now. So it's very expensive. But there's a lot of room for expansion, but it's resource intensive financially to try and do those things. But there's potential huge.
We have a question from Peter, and then I'll put a question from Anthony on YouTube. Peter asks if there has been a notable gender profile in adoption and enthusiasm.
Interesting question. When we go to primary schools, we actually find that the females do better, the girls. Our national winner when we were in the Sandton end of 2018 was a young grade 7 from Ezibileni Township outside Queenstown. So at primary school, I can't say it's majority girls, but let's be safe and say there's no gender difference. Sometimes the girls do actually better. Unfortunately, that doesn't realize when we get to first year of programming, where it's 80% boys. So something happens between primary school and first year. Right. But yeah, we've found girls really enjoying playing it.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for that. And Anthony Mietas from Sutherland is asking, is the resource only available in English or also in Afrikaans?
At this stage, it's English. With the Tanks app has the ability to be translated. I think it actually is available in Afrikaans if you're on Android and you set Afrikaans as your language for your system. But the learning material is unfortunately all in English at this stage. It's also cost intensive to have different languages. But when you start playing the game, language is not really a big issue because you're working with tokens, etc. So there's not much language involved on the app itself. Human language then.
Okay. Danelda has asked how one can get hold of a school kit.
Yeah, they can contact me afterwards. I always try not to commercialize the talks. But yes, yeah, they can contact me. The game sets, the 31 puzzles that you can play the whole game with for about 5 kids is 150 Rand, and the school kits are 3,000 Rand. And they contain 8 game sets, all the lesson plans, etc. And that's enough. You need, that's all you need for a class of 40 if you have cell phones.
Okay, all right. There are some links that are shared as well about the Tangible website where we can get more resources related to this game, which is great. Stabile is asking, in terms of having computing equipment available in schools for training, is there a platform for fundraising to obtain funding for building and maintaining computer labs?
Yeah, I'm not the expert in fundraising. We've just been through the Backer Buddy, using the Backer Buddy platform. But I can't really think that where I can get in support in raising funds for a school. But there are the generic crowdsourcing platforms that can be used. But unfortunately, the school is going to have to drive that. As I said, to get a computer lab running is about R1 million. And then you need technical staff, etc. So it's a very expensive exercise, unfortunately, for schools.
Right. And we have another question from YouTube here. How do you become an implementation partner? And are there any startup costs involved? And if so, what would it be more or less?
It's very, implementation partner is very informal. I just need to get to know about you. And then as corporate sponsors get involved, I identify people for whom I can give the games for free. So implementation partners would be typically schools from disadvantaged areas, NGOs working in disadvantaged areas that don't really have the budgets. And then I'm aware of you, and when there's a corporate sponsor, I can sponsor you games. So there's nothing formal. It's not going to cost you anything. I'm not trying to make money out of you. The corporate sponsors, they carry the cost. So people can just contact me, and I've got a little short list of people that I would like to help in the future. At this stage, it's not a very long list because we've got quite a few nice corporate sponsors that allow us to help across the country.
That's excellent. Another question from Kevin. Is there any chance of the Department of Education adopting this tool within the curriculum?
I've done a lot of talking to the departments of education in the Free State, Western Cape, Eastern Cape, Gauteng. I know Karina Labuskachny, who did the curriculum for coding and robotics. She's very excited. But these days, with all the, let's call it corruption around buying stuff, departments of education are very, very sensitive in choosing one tool. So at this stage, I cannot see any real breakthroughs in departments of education. It's more schools that get involved. We've had about 50 to 70 schools that have bought school kits. Obviously, I would love Department of Education to adopt it, but they are always very, very sensitive if they don't go through a whole process of putting it out there and other people's also applying. So at this stage, no joy. They show a lot of interest. They're very excited, but rolling it out at schools, I haven't seen any potential yet.
Okay. Well, this is excellent. I don't know if you have any more questions. I think we have gone through both the YouTube and the Zoom chats. I think this has been an incredibly inspiring, let me go back there. I think this has been a really, really inspiring talk and a really fantastic project. I pick up a couple of things here. One is that is the power of collaborative learning. I love your example of grade 10s teaching grade 8s. A second thing is the opportunities for research. And I'd like to flag this to all my colleagues that if anyone wants to do some research around this, John said that he's open to it. So thank you very, very much for that. And yeah, if there are any, there's one more question. Are the lesson plans only for primary school or also?
I think they would probably be relevant up to grade 9. Alexander Road was going to implement them for their grade 8 and 9 technology classes, which then leads into IT in grade 10. So they mainly aimed at primary school, but grade 8 and 9 would also work for the lesson plans. The complexity of the code is relevant up to matric. It's really complicated at the end. But I don't see... Matrics might look down on the lesson plans, but up to grade 9, I'm sure it can work very well.
Okay, excellent.
Unfortunately, COVID did put a hamper on that. Those things were going to be rolled out this year in schools, and all the schools have shelved them and told me they're trying again next year.
Well, let's hope next year is less disrupted than this year.
Yes.
Right. So I would like to thank our speaker again very, very much. I think those of you who have your camera on, you can wave and clap from your side. I think this was really, really, truly inspiring. Thank you very, very much. I hope those of you who want to be in touch with Prof. Greyling do so. Oh, good to see you.
Yeah,
And
I thought I'll just show myself quickly.
yes, this is nice. And so we have an email address, we have a phone number. Obviously, you can also contact us. We can forward any requests further to Prof. Greyling. And this recording will remain available on YouTube and will be easy to find on the IDEA website. So thank you very much. And get in touch with Prof. Greyling if you want to know any more about this, and get in touch with me if you want to know more about this seminar series. So thank you again, Prof. Greyling, and have a wonderful day further.
Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.